Hello, how are you doing? Good afternoon. Hope you're having a great start to your lunch break, and welcome to another Nemarin Live. We are streaming. I believe it to be true. We're streaming on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitch. We're giving Twitch a go. We've probably got like one viewer, which is probably us watching, but never mind. We are on Twitch, also on Twitter and YouTube as well. Great to see you, and thank you very much indeed for tuning in. Today, we're going to be talking about profile films. What is a profile film? How do you make them? Are they complicated? Are they expensive? Blah, blah, blah. What's the return on investment, etc. So we'll be talking about that in a moment. As ever, don't forget, if you want to ask some questions, first of all, don't make them too hard. But if you do feel like asking some questions, then feel free to do that using the chat box on whichever platform you're on. And also, please do share the love if you feel like sharing this link. Then please do so. That will be much appreciated. So we'll probably be on air for the next half an hour. And joining us today, two of the best people in the Nemarin team. We've got Juan and Ian. Hi, guys. How are you doing?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Cool. So first of all, Juan, you've been with us for a very long time over at Nemarin. Do you want to sort of tell the audience what it is that you do on a day-to-day basis, apart from just being very busy?
Yes. So yes, I've been with Nemarin from the beginning, so that's 5 years. And I run the studio and I'm the PM, a production manager. So I direct and produce some of the projects that we make. And when we were in the office, I would run the pipeline with the team. Now we are doing this from the comfort of our living room.
Very good. And Ian, great to have you with us as well.
Yeah. I've been with the Nemarin team for a couple of years. It's been great. Just get to receive all the footage and plug away at it. It's fun.
Good to have you guys with us. And as I say, if you feel like asking any questions to the team, then feel free to use the chat box. As ever, we would love to hear from you. But first of all, first question to Juan. We talk about profile films quite a lot when we're talking to clients. And we're describing different types of video content, different genres and so on. Like, how would you describe what a profile film is?
Okay, so a profile film is normally 90 seconds, 2 minutes. It can be longer, but this would be a good length to start, where we focus about a person. What this person does, and sometimes can be somebody famous, can be an influencer, sometimes can be the designer, the CEO, or someone whose endorsement is relevant to the brand. Then on this 90-second journey, or 2 or 3 minutes, we just get to find out a few things about this person, and by association, we see how that works with the brand. So this works really well because people who might not necessarily be interested in a brand, but they do follow a certain celebrity or sports person or entrepreneur, they get to know more about the brand through that person. So it's basically a lead way. Sometimes this person is intrinsically tied to the brand, so their image and then all stays in house. So it's a really good way, basically, to show the alignment with this person that we're going to see and the brand.
Okay, so it's like a soft sell. It's an interview with someone, but in terms of the way that the brand features, it's quite soft, like a documentary, I suppose, in some ways. So if we had a brand, or if the brand is interested in kind of doing something like a profile film, what are the main things to consider?
So first of all, obviously, find the person who's 100% right for this video. Normally, on our experience, that person is already chosen. The brands, they already have a pool of people that are either on contract or they have an agreement. So they just see what person is best for that specific video. If a brand came to us and they didn't have someone, we can definitely help with that too. We would just find somebody and that's aligned. Is it an influencer? Is it, I don't know, somebody who's inspiring, somebody whose trajectory can interest the viewer? And then we would research massively about this person. That happens as well if they give us the person, if they tell us if he's Nadal, a tennis player, or you still need to research a lot about this person. See what their tone is like, if they are funny, they're upbeat, what's their vibe, because that's going to be basically the flavor of the video. You can always direct people, but if they're not professional actors or models who are used to be guided by a director, these things can, get a little bit bumpy when you're trying to get a specific feeling. So see what their flavor is on camera, and surely there will be plenty of interviews out there on YouTube. And then start shaping things in a way that they work on your favor. So don't complicate things. Don't get somebody who's shy and try to make a video which is going to be like really kind of upbeat and high energy. Try to keep things that would work for the personality. And then once that is locked, then we would go into create a script with that gets signed off with the brand. So that here is kind of interesting subject, because some brands want to get a really hard sale and brand mentioning, and doesn't necessarily always work that way. Sometimes it's a lot better to just hint to it or have like a soft reference to it, and even just a product placement, sometimes not even refer it at all. So this needs to be very clear. That would be the second step. Basically, develop the story. If it's going to be 90 seconds, what are we going to see? What are the subjects that we're going to touch?
Brilliant. We're going to have a look at the Hugo Boss video in a moment that you directed, but just in terms of kind of thinking of another example, I know that we've created some profile films for watch brands before. So an example of kind of how that worked, and feel free to interject one, but essentially it's a series of films, short documentaries about influential people, but not necessarily like influencers, social media influence, just influential people. And if it's a watch brand, we may be talking about the importance of quality time, for example, as opposed to, wow, I really love this watch. Where possible, we try and intertwine some product placement if it's aiding their story legitimately. Would you say that's a kind of fair summary of that?
Yes, 100%. So one of the campaigns that we have done in the past were the IWC watches, and for example, and as you say, like time, the word time was the product placement, so to speak. And when we heard the talent say, I try to do the best with my time, or my quality time, or I'm having me time. So we made this series of videos, and every time we hear the word time, there would be a shot of the person either cooking, where we see the hand, or playing a piano, and we see the hand with the watch. So it was very subtle / obvious. So, but there was that kind of like hero frame where you would see everything, and it would just work perfectly, because, for example, it could be that he is just talking about how to set up a table for a dinner party, and you would watch that anyway, regardless if you can, if you're interested in buying that watch. So as you said, it's just when we merge all of these things, I think you create very successful content, because they're just like hitting different demographics, and also they're hitting different subjects. So you kind of like quite broadening the views.
Fantastic. Okay, well, let's have a look at a video that we shot at the beginning of the year. I think it was, when was it? January, February time, something like that.
January.
Yeah, it feels like 10 years ago, and the whole world was totally different back then. It's quite bizarre how much has changed in a very short space of time. But yeah, this was shot in Los Angeles, directed by Juan, and is a really good example of a profile film that we love making at Nemarin. So let's have a look.
Being a designer is like being a storyteller. You're communicating through your work. My name is Sigurd Larsen, and I'm an architect and furniture designer. I don't explain to everyone who comes into a room where exactly the idea comes from. I think they should try to experience it alone. The same thing happens with nature. It's simply just something that needs to be experienced. When I'm in the city, I try to do the most I can with my time. So I tend to wear clothes that offer me versatility, like this outfit. I can wear it to a meeting, or I can wear it at home reading a book after a long day at work. Taking time off to recharge is absolutely crucial to the creative process. Creativity needs to breathe. The perfect balance is between an everyday life in the city, like in my case, and then time off away from the city as a contrast. I like wearing a warm vest in case the temperature suddenly drops. It's something that goes with my style. To walk in the nature is as important to me as my sort of more hectic urban routines. By doing so, I also keep exploring things within myself.
Great stuff. We had lots of fun making that. We're going to be talking to Ian in a second, just in terms of how an editor goes around sort of approaching cutting something like that, particularly with the split screens in that particular example. Quick question though from Juan. I know that we're going to talk about the overview of that particular production in terms of what was happening behind the scenes, but that was obviously scripted. So he's kind of reading from a kind of, I guess, a pre-agreed script. But does that always have to be the case? Could it be just like a regular interview as well?
Yes. So here's the thing. This one was actually a regular interview. So the way I work is normally I would create a safe script. So I would write it, and I would research about the person. So I would try to use their words. So I'm not making crazy stuff up. And if possible, I would try to include something they've said in a previous interview. So it really resonates and they're like truthful to who they are. And I write a script that reads 90 seconds. And I would share this with the client. This is kind of an emergency, something to fall back on. Because sometimes when the talent travels, they're jet lagged or they're like exhausted from the previous shoot, because many times they link one with another one. And, being spontaneous and good in an interview sometimes can just be a challenge. So this is something to fall back on and like, okay, let's just read this. In this case, we went for a full interview. So we just, I tried to get the same information that I had on that approved script via an interview that lasted an hour, asking several questions where it was a lot more natural. Then I always try to ask them, can you just repeat that? So, and I would feed a few sentences just to make sure that the basic is covered. And then we have wonderful editors on the other end, like Ian. And I would send my notes and in a wish list, if it's possible. I always like to pass this to the editor as well to help enhance the story, because they come from a different angle, so they always have something very interesting to add.
Yeah, completely agree. I guess most production companies just turn up with a bunch of rushes at the end and kind of give it to the editor and say, good luck with that. But I guess at Nemarin, what we like to do where possible is bring in as many people as possible, particularly the editor. Like half the film is being directed by the editor really at an early stage. Ian, perhaps what's the benefits of kind of coming in at that early stage when the idea is being nurtured and developed?
Well, I think that's the first time I've ever heard, somebody higher up saying that the editor is actually a director at the early stage. So I thank you for that. It's about, like, with our team, we're always pretty collaborative. I think with that particular project, I saw storyboards before Juan had flown out, so I knew exactly what they were going for with that project. Because it's a Hugo Boss project, they are breaking things down to really emphasize the clothing. So I know when I am approaching the edit, I need to make those shots look the best overall. And with that split screen, it was definitely something that we had to have a discussion beforehand, because I needed to emphasize, like, we need these frames to match, or it's going to be a whole lot more trouble when the edit happens. So that was just a conversation between Juan and myself that was very important.
So you kind of almost have to feed back to the DOP in terms of, right, this is how you need to shoot this particular thing, because the next thing that you're filming, like the following day or later that day, somewhere totally different, it needs to be the same composition.
Yeah, there is technology as well. Like on set, you can get sort of monitors to allow you to superimpose one image over the other, so you can absolutely make sure that this person's standing in the same position. I'm not sure Juan had access to those things, so it was a bit more run and gun and a bit more, putting their faith in the DOP doing his job properly. But in the end, I think we managed to make it work. So.
Great. Yeah, and I think Nike had a similar campaign that we'll have a look at in a moment in terms of that split screen look. But Juan, you got to film in some pretty cool locations in Los Angeles. I assume it's not just a case of just rocking up and kind of busking it. There's recce's involved and permits and so on.
Exactly. No, you can't, especially with something like that. If it was more off the cuff and the vibe was different, more documentary, you could do that. It's still a risk, but you need to do a recce. You need to create a shot list. You need to know as much information as possible. In the end, shot list that gets approved, normally the pictures that are there, they're not drawings, they're pictures of the actual locations and somebody standing in, an assistant or basically pretending to be the model. And then the day that you go and shoot, you can't just be a máquina bala, shoot this angle, this area. You need to go exactly, even if you're shooting in the forest as we were here, is this tree, is at this time of the day, the sun is hitting through this branch, this is the orientation, the shadows are going in this way, especially if you're doing split screen, the where the light is going to hit, you can't have it on shade. There's too many things that you can't risk. So it's super manicured. Everything has to be exactly tailored and also timed, because it's a very long day, and this was shot in January, which the days are much shorter, so you have limited light. Very early start, and literally running late 20 minutes can just have a knock-on effect on your rest of the day. So it's basically it's all on the pre-production. It's all on just making sure that by the moment you get at the door the day of the shoot, everything has been so discussed that it's just following the schedule that you have. And the only unknown is weather. But that's why you shoot in places like Los Angeles, California, or South Africa. You kind of have the sunshine guarantee.
And can you, just a quick question, can you think of some sort of benefits of going to the extra time and, potentially expensive, doing things like a split screen and so on in a profile film? Would you say maybe that kind of adds some pace and therefore may add some kind of increased levels of engagement, for example?
100%. Let's take this example for instance. So from very early on, you get to, so it's the travel collection, and there's all these different looks, all these 4 looks. Very early on, you start seeing the split screen, and there's something different in there. Very early on, you're injecting more product into it, but without hammering. It just flows with the narrative, and it's just more palatable. It just makes it more fun to watch, and even if it's for the curiosity of like, oh, let's see how well this is lined up. It kind of like drags you to continue to watch it, and the more love is injected in pre-production, the more new techniques or anything that you want to surprise audiences. They're very savvy, so they're going to pick up on that, and more likely you're going to get more views. It's going to have more shares organically, and on terms of return of investment, it's worth every penny.
Absolutely. Now, of course, we're not the only people using some split screen techniques. Nike made a very nice video recently using a similar sort of split screen tool. Let's have a look at that.
We're never alone. And that is our strength. Because when we're doubted, we'll play as one. When we're held back, we'll go farther and harder. If we're not taken seriously, we'll prove that wrong. And if we don't fit the sport, we'll change the sport. We know things won't always go our way.
And the world's sporting events are postponed or cancelled.
But whatever it is, we'll find a way. And when things aren't fair, we'll come together for change.
We have a responsibility
to make this world a better place.
And no matter how bad it gets, we will always come back stronger. Because nothing can stop what we can do together.
Great stuff. Now, before we talk more broadly about profile films again, another question for Ian, actually, in terms of some of the complexities around this sort of style of editing. It looks really simple, like, that Nike video is amazing, and it looks really easy, but I guess it's not.
I mean, that is one of those Goosebumps ads that Nike produces seemingly every year. It's heavily complex. I mean, but Nike probably has a huge team who are, pretty dedicated to that sort of thing. That one, you can see from my perspective how much they put into researching clips, and they probably even integrated a lot of AI technology where they matched up, footage with footage and trying to find the best shots for, making that come alive. The only sort of piece was with the LeBron James and the Rapinoe piece. That was the only in footage audio that you heard. There's probably AI involved in that, finding, LeBron James saying the beginning of the sentence and Megan Rapinoe saying the end. That it boggles my mind how much work probably had to go into that sort of thing. But in the end, you have a collection of setups and archive footage that's just beautiful.
And in an ideal world, would an editor be on set when some of this stuff is being recorded?
I would assume they would be heavily involved. A lot of that stuff is archived, so it's probably mostly done in the edit suite. But there are some shots that there's a girl on a beach, there's a guy dunking a basketball in a pool, that I think those were probably either sourced from stock or just set up and shot by Nike themselves to, really have everything they needed to make the perfect ad.
All right, cool. We're going to have a look at another one of Juan's films in a moment, a profile film, again, for Hugo Boss for Jeremy, that we filmed with Jeremy Irvine in South Africa. We're going to have a look at that in a second. But Juan, when we're talking to brands and they say, we want to do a profile film, you'll probably have someone like Jeremy Irvine in there. How do we sort of develop the story and ideally interconnect the brand into that story? Where do we start?
Wow, that's a very good question, because it's not always as straightforward. You need to find something that feels organic to who they are. So it's either a subject, and then you just weave all these requests or needs from the brand. So if we take, for example, this Jeremy Irvine one, this one was obviously, to start, he's a kind of a Hollywood celebrity. He's been in big films. He's been in Mamma Mia. He's done lead roles for Hollywood, like the Stonewall. So we're talking, he already has a team of people, and his persona, what he projects, everything has a consistency, so to speak. You need to weigh or consider all of these things as well, and keep it true to who he is and what his message is as himself, as Jeremy Irvine. In this case, for example, I think it was travel. The campaign was about travel, and we just fed that into his lifestyle. And we made a conversation revolve about traveling to different places and what items he gets, and what the hero items, for example, for that particular collection. That's what he's wearing when he's getting at home. So he talks about packing. So you tick many boxes there, because he has a following as a kind of actor, like a good-looking lead role actor, and his following is interested in things like, from what he has for breakfast or how he packs his suitcase. So that's the kind of angle that we took. But it changed. It's completely different for each of the talent of each film. So there really isn't a set rule as such. You always need to weave all these elements and just make sure that. My suggestion is always try to keep this as organic as possible. The audience will smell a rat. If you're trying to hammer things that just don't feel real, the whole thing just might feel forced.
Absolutely. I know you had lots of fun shooting this one. So let's have a look. This is Jeremy Irvine filming for Hugo Boss.
Traveling for me brings out my adventurous, risk-taking side. I still push myself. My name is Jeremy Irvine, and I'm an actor. I'm quite utilitarian with my packing. I like to make a list. I like to be very precise. It's just about keeping things simple makes packing easier and makes life easier. It's always good to have at least one coat with you, and I think that's the British person inside me, wanting to always be prepared for rain. A lot of my wardrobe is made up of blacks and whites and dark blues, but you know, every now and again it's fun to throw something a bit colourful in there. I always make sure I have a good pair of trousers as well. It just gives you a kind of cleaner, crisper kind of look for those smarter occasions. Travel a lot for work, find myself getting on planes at least 10 times a year. But I also love traveling for fun. The most sort of genuine experiences I have are the ones which I don't plan. Yeah, it's nice to have a bit of variety.
Very nice indeed. I love the sound design in that as well. Sound design is so often overlooked, but I love it in that film. Juan, what can you tell us about the production for that project?
Well, this one was meant to be California, and it was shot in South Africa. For many reasons, I was shooting something else in South Africa, and then things just kind of aligned. So this is meant to be just on the outside of Los Angeles. And for this particular one, it was the what had as intent. It was the weather. It was meant to rain, thunderstorms, all of that. The day before the shoot, the day of the shoot, and the day after. So we had lots of contingencies and endless planning, measuring the wind. Are the lights going to fly away? Can we shoot it? Can we film it? We had like all the locations as a backup. In the end, on the day, we had like beautiful sunshine and, with like quick moving clouds. So that kind of like worked out well. This is part, the images that we're seeing, they're part of the same trip. They were to shoot. This one was indoors, as we're seeing now. And this was a little easier to control because obviously it's not so weather dependent. And even if it rains, you can always just pretend that there's like a blasting sunshine coming from outside. And we were using the Trinity, which is a specific tool where basically it's like a gimbal to hold the camera, where you can twist it in every direction, and then you can turn it around. And we had to fly this guy that we see here from Johannesburg to Cape Town because he was basically the best one on operating this device. You can do these stills also digitally, but of course anything that you can do on the actual shoot day, it just makes it all look way nicer. And as overall, it was yes, there were two videos intertwined with the stills shoot. This happens also very often with fashion shoots. So both things are happening simultaneously on the same location. We're seeing a crew with moving lights and moving the camera, and then on another level of the house, we're seeing how the stills are being taken, and the models are just having to travel from floor to floor, and now you're acting, now you're just like staying static for the stills. But as I said earlier, if everything is just like well planned and orchestrated, everybody has got their own the photographers as well have got their own shot list, and they've measured the light when it enters exactly as the video crew has done. And then we have a meeting, and then we just basically match up all of these needs, and we just pass the talent around. In this case, we had other models. It wasn't just Jeremy Arvan and Ghislaine Duval, because there were too many looks. So there were other guys who were basically coming. Here is the moment where we were shooting that scene where it needed like absolutely beautiful sky. If you can see, it's a little bit gray. So it was windy and we were on the beach. So the clouds were moving quite fast. And at the moment that the sky just opened, we were scheduled to film something else. But we all ran and we're like, okay, let's just do this now immediately. And we took Jeremy out, change of costume, and made the best of that moment. And if you look at the video, you just think it's a glorious sunny day in California, and in fact was a rainy, damp, cloudy day in Cape Town. So this is the magic of like trying to make the needs of the brand work in any situation. If we had had torrential rain, we had another plan B, which would have been shoot this on another location, on the rooftop of a hotel, just get the clothes, just shot from like from the chest up, and wait for a moment before Jeremy had to fly. But luckily, this just kind of worked out for the best, and we didn't have to do that. But you always have to have all of these plan B. My motto is over prepare, go with the flow, and it's just it makes it a lot easier to know that you have something to fall back on.
I remember you were so unlucky with the weather. I think it was literally sunny in the run-up too, and sunny just after you wrapped, from memory. And the funny thing is about South Africa, it's so good for filming because you normally get great weather, but the crews that are there are incredible. The crew and the kind of resource, the filming resources, and the hire teams as well. Isn't that right, Juan?
It's incredible. Yeah. It was absolutely fantastic. There was not they were like Hollywood standard, like shooting that in LA. And Cape Town pretending that was LA, and both of the crews were absolutely top notch and the best on the industry. They were from art department to camera to any sound, any post production. It was absolutely top notch.
Brilliant. And don't forget, if you're watching at home, wherever you happen to be, if you have any questions for the guys, just use the chat box and we'll do what we can to answer the question. Just another very quick one for Juan before we move over to Ian and the post-production process for these films. I know you had some very long days, but how long do we typically need the talent for? Is it actually a lot shorter than it may seem, or?
Okay, good question. So for instance, in a case like Jeremy, where he has a very tight schedule, you have him for a day. Sometimes you can have him we had to fit the interview on the same shoot day, for example, and you need to make it work. So I'd say it's a day shoot. Sometimes you have a second day for pickups, and then you can do just cutaways. In the first video that we saw, I had to request a model who looked like the talent. So this was Sigurd Larsen. He's an architect based in Germany. Because he had to fly, we couldn't have him for a second day, and I still needed scenes because there were so many unit moves, and we had to be in the forest and then in the house. So on the second day, we just had a model who had his same height, same hair, and a few of the shots that you see there is actually not the model, not actually the talent, Sigurd Larsen. It was just another model who just looked like him, and we just had like from the back or walking. So as a normal rule, a day and a half is safe, sometimes two, but a day and a half. And if all is very heavily talent based, then you need to make it work in a day. On the pre-production, these lead up can be a lot longer. You need a lot of layers of like approval, and I'd say a healthy, it's a month from the get hands on to the day that you shoot. Of course, if you have more, all the better, but 30 days at least.
And so Ian, obviously Juan was unlucky with the weather there in terms of it being kind of basically raining. What are the knock-on effects to the world of color grading in that situation where you don't have that beautiful South African light and it's grey and overcast?
Well, I mean, you can always, you can do a lot in color grading these days. So it's not tough, but it will, add time on the back end to the post process, because you are going to have to frame match everything, especially if there's a multi-day shoot where the first day is, torrential rain and the next day is bright and sunny. So it's always going to, factor in, but, you can do anything with computers these days, seemingly.
And so obviously we're talking about profile films today, and earlier we were talking about scripted versus non-scripted. From an editor point of view, what do you prefer, and what do you sort of honestly feel, provides the best result for the client?
I absolutely prefer non-scripted, and especially when the director can, develop a rapport with the subject. With Jeremy there, he's an actor, so he's going to be able to deliver what the brand wants in a convincing way. But the other film that went along with that was a model named Ghislaine Duval. And he English was his second language, and he's a model, so he's not used to being in front of video and delivering a script. So that was a lot more challenging to put the story together. But we eventually did it. But it just requires the director and the subject developing a rapport. With a profile film, you can really, bring out the personality of the person who's on screen, and that will essentially help sell the product, because if you can sell their personality and that personality is branded with the logo and with the client, then it just really, really helps, the feel of the film, the whole personality of the project.
Cool. Yeah, we can, unfortunately, I'm going to have to be wrapping up in a second, but it's actually the same question to Juan as well, in terms of your preferences around scripted, non-scripted, and if you're going non-scripted, but you're, interviewing someone who isn't comfortable being interviewed, what are the kind of challenges around that?
Well, it always depends. As Ian said, if I'm working with somebody who's not used to be interviewed, or a model, or in the research, I normally would find out if they're not very eloquent and or they have a problem to express themselves, or they're like, or I can identify something when I can see that being fed lines when they're on an interview, and that is something that is not a red flag, but it's something that then you need to tackle on very early, and you need to be there ready, and you need to warm them up and gain their trust, because most of the times it's not that they don't know how to express themselves, it's that they feel on the spot, and you just need to keep things conversational. I remember in one instance we were interviewing somebody from Pomelato back on one of the video, another profile thing we did, and one of the talents was incredibly nervous. So when I just had a signal with the crew to go like, you start rolling, when I can't remember, a hand gesture, just start rolling. So we had the person there, and then just kept chatting, and like, how long you had this office, and blah blah blah. And then like slowly I started like feeling the questions of the interview, and we were rolling, and everybody had the sign to like keep quiet. And when we were ending, the talent just realized that we actually had been filming, but he had just been put on ease. And everybody knows how to speak. We're on the pub and chatting, and we don't always have the opportunity to do it this way. We don't have the luxury. Sometimes it's all really rushed, and it just kind of like have to happen there. In an ideal world, yes, I prefer like Ian, just to get the interview out, but just chatting with the person. In some other cases, only if the layers of approval, when it goes high up in the brand, things get diluted, it's safer if the brand provides a script. Mostly because the round of approvals then it gets more complex, I'd say.
Cool. All right, brilliant. Well, we're almost done. I think maybe one last question to both of you. If we had a brand, or if there's a brand out there that's kind of considering doing something like a profile film, why should they give it a go? What is it about profile films that can support their business or brand in terms of what they're trying to say about themselves? Maybe Juan, you can start with that one.
Yeah, as I said earlier, so you can it broadens up your views. Choosing the right talent can all of a sudden bring an unexpected set of demographic to your brand that might then be interested in the brand by listening to what this person has to say. So is the best way to not hammer in just like hardcore branding messages. It's not a commercial. It's something, and audiences are really aware of it now. So they're like, okay, yeah, I know what is this, but I'm interested to see, like find out what this person has to say. So it's just part of the game now. So if you haven't done it, I definitely, it's definitely worth giving it a try, because you can only have positive outcome out of it. So.
I completely agree. It's these days, I mean, brands are always just trying to attach themselves to a personality of a person, with influencer marketing, with all that stuff. So these are essentially, mini documentaries. So if a brand can attach themselves to people that they recognize, and really not just be heavy-handed, because I think profile films before were, a personality talking directly to camera and saying, this is why I like this product. But these days, it's way more a casual approach to just seeing how this person lives their daily life, seeing a slice of what they think about a specific subject, but, you know, having that brand, you know, provide that information to you, you know, subtly and, you know, in a very informative way. It really helps, you know, both the subject and the brand in the end. It doesn't hit you over the head with that.
Awesome. Thanks very much. Ian, Senior Video Editor at Nemarin Film and Video, and Juan, Producer, Senior Director at Nemarin as well. Thank you guys very much indeed. So, yep, if you work for a brand, if you represent brands, brand films, profile films are such a great way to communicate with your audience in an authentic way. They're narrative rich, they're audience centric. It's all about storytelling, and we love working on them as well. So if you want to get in touch with anything video related, we'd love to have a chat. We're open right now 7 days a week actually, at nemarin.com or 0330-122-4714. And that's about it for this Nemarin Live. Thank you very much indeed for watching. Hello to Nick as well. I can see Nick is tuning in. Hello to you. Good to see you again. And that's about it. Until next time, we're going to leave you with our show reel. Thank you for watching.
Nemarin Film and Video,
the world's branded video agency.
2020 showreel.
I always wanted to be a storyteller.
I knew I wanted to do something more creative.
Something really magical.
Everything is about the rhythm.
Ow! Sheer publicity.
Okay, so the faces thing?
Yeah.
There is no comparison to beauty.
And you will never get bored of it.
Nemarin.